Welcome to the Geek in Review, the podcast focused on innovative and creative ideas in the legal profession. I'm Marlene Gebauer.
And I'm Greg Lambert. Well, Marlene, last week we got to do the Links conference, so thanks to Colleen Cable and to Chris Martin at Harbor and Joanne there. Had a great time. We took copious amounts of notes to be prepared to speak at the end, and then it turned out we didn't use hardly any of those notes at all.
So. That was very funny. It's like, and it's fairly common. Like, you basically do all this prep, and then it kind of takes a different course, and that's okay. So,
yeah, well,
but yeah,
prepared.
Really good conference.
Yeah,
it was a really good conference, and really enjoyed the speakers and the panels. Got a lot of good information. I should note for our listeners, so I am working really remotely. I am working at my parents' house today, so apologies for any background noise or my it's like how it sounds. I'm kind of doing this off of my iPhone, so.
Yeah. Well, you'll just test my editing skills and see how well I can. That's it. How well I can get the breakfast dishes sound out of the way.
No, that's no joke.
Yeah, no, I could hear them.
No, you could hear it.
So Marlene, we are lately just chock full of special episodes, and this week is no exception.
Yes, we are very excited to have Christina Wojcik joining us today on the podcast. As many of our listeners read recently, Christina is the new Managing Director of Corporate for LexFusion and brings over 20 years of experience driving innovation in the legal services and technology. She has a very unique background, having worked on both the legal service provider side with companies like Pangea 3, IBM, and Seal Software, as well as leading innovation strategy internally at Citi. Christina Wojcik, welcome to the Geek in Review.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure being with you today. And Marlene, just like you had said, I'm kind of in transit right now. So I'm in a hotel room in New York City after a whirlwind week here, and I'm just really excited to be here and to be with you today.
Well, Christina, you bring an amazing amount of experience in legal tech and innovation from, a lot of different perspectives. So what initially drew you into this field, and, what's kept you engaged in this field throughout your career?
It's one of those things where it was kind of a combination of good luck meets bad luck meets timing meets, eclectic meets not being afraid to do something a little outside the box. I went to law school, not necessarily knowing if I wanted to be a lawyer or not, but it just seemed like the right thing to do at the time based on my undergraduate degrees. And when I graduated, I moved to Washington, D.C. to focus on international human rights, especially with women and children being trafficked. But unfortunately, what I realized very quickly is that doesn't actually pay back your very expensive law school student loans. So a little bit of bad luck there, a little bit of naivete there. And so I quickly pivoted over to kind of the business side of law. So I was involved in the very early days of moving document reviews from the law firms to, the temporary attorneys or the contract attorneys, helping set up and run some of those shops at Kelly Law Registry. I got really interested in more of the academic side of how one runs an in-house corporate legal department. So just my kind of curiosity took me to the corporate executive board, or then it moved to CEB, and now it's been acquired by Gartner, to help, in-house counsel recognize best-in-class practices for their legal departments through research and literature. And from there, it just kind of following my interest and following people that were doing really cool, disruptive, and innovative things. It's just kind of captured my attention, and I just keep following along that path.
Sounds exciting.
Christina, speaking of exciting, you were at Pangea 3 during its high growth and acquisition period. When it was acquired by Thomson Reuters. So what key lessons did you take away from being part of the pioneering legal service community?
So working with Pangea 3, I actually discovered them very, very early in their stages, just when outsourcing legal work to India was becoming a thing. I was at the corporate executive board at the time, and I learned a little bit more about what they were doing just through the research of the CEB organization. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. right? Like I really believed in the vision. I really believed in the value that they were trying to drive. And I really believed in the leadership that was growing that organization and growing that category that hadn't really existed before. So Pangea 3's leadership with David and Sanjay and Greg McPullen and Jonathan Goldstein, Kevin Colangelo, were just incredible. And I was working very closely with all of them in the U.S. when I had joined. And, you know, watching the team that David and Sanjay built around them, which includes Joe Borstein and people like Marlene Priviano, who are just brilliant and passionate people about the things that they believe in. And so when I think about key lessons that I took away from pioneering a legal services company, or probably any company, is like really believing in, you know, what you're doing, what your team is doing, and trusting in the leadership of the organization that you're joining. If all those three things come together, you can have incredible amounts of success. And fortunately for Pangea 3, that's exactly what we had experienced.
Yeah, that's quite an all-star group of people that you worked with.
Absolutely.
So making the jump from legal services over to legal tech, you know, starting with IBM, then you went to Seal Software. What stood out as some of the biggest differences that you saw between the two sides of the industry?
I think that there were more similarities probably than differences, right? So the services side and the tech side were all trying to solve critical problems that law firms and in-house counsel were experiencing, right? And I think that when we're looking at my experience at IBM, we were really trying to tackle some of the incredibly large challenges. So it was around the time that Watson had, won Jeopardy, and really focusing at that time on how we could potentially apply cognitive analytics to the legal space. And there was a competition essentially within IBM as to where should the productization of Watson's capabilities really be focused on. And at the time, the decision was made to look at oncology, right? What can we do in the medical field with Watson? What type of predictions can be made about cancer treatments? And legal was coming in kind of that next round of investigation and evaluation. But then when you think about Seal Software, exactly what I had said about experience at Pangea 3, which is I had a group of incredibly talented leaders with Al Sederberg, Kevin, with Steve Tucker, Dan Daler, and many others. And I apologize for not listing everyone there, but really incredible leadership who were really trying to shake the way things have been done traditionally in the past to provide better professional and personal experiences for those people within law firms and corporations who were really struggling to ensure that they were adding value to high, large scale, repeatable type programs and projects. So I think in terms of leadership and in terms of goals and visions, a lot of similarities between those two startups. And I think the common thread between all of the startups is just the fearlessness of the people who are engaging with it to go and tackle something that, truly hasn't been done before, hasn't been proven out, but knowing that it's the right thing to do and really just sticking to that cause of driving value.
I'm just curious, while you were at IBM, and since this was during the Watson hype, how exciting was it being part of that at the time?
Yeah, I mean, this is like where, I couldn't have timed that. Again, this is where the luck comes back in. I couldn't have timed that any better because the amount of geek out sessions that we could have about the potential of cognitive analytics as it could be applicable to the legal space before anyone else was really doing or thinking about it was such a fun ride, right? And it was so much fun to just sit down with some of the brightest brains in the world, really thinking about what impact could we have if we could have, actual thought-based processes to different areas within legal. So it was an incredibly exciting time, frustrating as well, because I wanted to see things happen as quickly as possible because I appreciate the impact that it could make, but recognizing, and I think this is a little kind of alluding to what we're experiencing today with generative AI, also doing it cautiously, right? Because this is before a lot of the podcasts and the things going, well, this is actually before podcasting, but around like, will the robots win, right? Are the robots going to take over everything? I think, a lot more fear, uncertainty, and doubt than needs to be at that time, given like the limitations of the technology. But still, that's really where we started the gears turning on. What could the future look like if the robots are potentially have the opportunity to take over? We weren't quite there yet at IBM, but it's been an incredible journey watching how it's progressed to where we are today.
Yeah, I do remember the very sort of us versus them kind of feeling when everybody was kind of watching to see if in fact Watson would win. Heading up innovation and tech strategy internally at top financial institution like Citi, that must have given great insights into legal department needs. So what would you say are some of the biggest pain points that you see in legal teams and what they're facing today?
I think what a lot of the legal departments are facing today is a common story, especially around some of the tier one financial institution, and it's about spend analytics, big data, cost reductions. It's also about selecting the right type of solutions to fit your needs, and the fear of potentially making a mistake in the selections of those solutions. Especially at organizations like Citi and the other tier one financial institutions and other highly regulated organizations, they're under constant pressure from regulatory oversight, from regulatory involvement. If the correct actions are taken, there might be opportunities for significant fines or immediate exposure. And legal is kind of at the forefront of a lot of that in terms of mitigating risk and ensuring that the organization is as protected as we could possibly be from a lot of different areas. And so, when I think about things that legal departments, really in-house legal departments want to ensure that they're doing is getting access and visibility into information in different ways than maybe historically was needed. And how do we do that, especially when you have as much data, as much information that flows through an organization the size of Citi? And how do we ensure that data is visible and being applied appropriately, as well as ensuring that all the other things that go into running a major legal organization, outside counsel management, law firm performance, legal technology, e-billing matter management, and then some of the challenges that we face when we're looking at the intersection of where business and legal meet, and ensuring that intersection and the technology being used offers a seamless experience, so that way information flowing upstream and downstream is as untouched by manual processes as possible in order to try and reduce any type of human-related errors. So when you're looking at a legal organization the size of a tier one financial institution, there are a lot of pain points, but there's also a lot of incredibly smart people who are working on, addressing, solving, and mitigating those pain points every single day.
You mentioned that fear factor, and I'm wondering, in relation to legal technology, are there discussions that you're aware of in terms of, generative AI and sort of what decisions should be made around that, particularly since the technology seems to be changing very rapidly and regulations aren't really keeping up?
I think that there is significant, I don't know if I would use the word fear, but caution, right? Very much kind of a proceed with caution. And it depends on the organization. Different types of organizations have different types of risk exposure, right? And there's certain types of organizations where you do not want them to potentially get this wrong, because could it bring down the global financial market? That's a very very big concern. But there's other organizations where the impact, if they use generative AI or if any of their information is exposed in a way that will have less global impact, and they have the opportunities to be maybe a little bit more fearless with their pursuit and use of technology like generative AI. Within the tier one financial institutions, it's very much a closed door situation right now, where testing is going on in kind of a lockdown environment, using large language models in areas where it can't necessarily be exposed to outside influences, right? To ensure we understand exactly what it does, how it works, and what are the risk and control mechanisms we need to put around it to ensure that the monster doesn't come out of the box, right? I alluded to I was just at a conference this week, incredible conference on Gen AI for legal. And, I alluded to the fact that it was kind of like the monster behind the door. And I don't know if Stranger Things is a good reference to make, right? But you have all these scientists who are kind of behind the door, poking and prodding at the Gen AI, understanding exactly how it's going to react, where it's going to get angry, where it's okay, and how we can use it to potentially benefit, but not necessarily ready to open up the gates to let that monster out yet. Because once it's out, if you saw Stranger Things, it can have negative impacts and implications. And so I think we're still kind of at least in the tier 1 financial institution, still monster behind the door. Let's start looking at it for things that are within the realms of understanding. We know what it'll do. We know how to control it. But also, even taking a step back from Gen AI, even when we're looking at more of the predictive AI, when it comes to things like machine learning, natural language processing, latent semantic indexing, those things where you don't have to worry about the machine, whether it's hallucinating or lying to you. You just need to worry about whether or not the model is learning away from what you taught it, right? One of the examples I use is, if I teach it to find a fork, like a dinner fork that you eat with, over time, is it also pulling in like a pitchfork, right? Like you can see why the model might get confused. It's a fork, it's prongs, like it does things kind of similar. But like if I want to eat dinner, although sometimes I think my family would say it looks like I'm eating with a pitchfork, I prefer a dinner fork to eat dinner. So with that type of, with that type of predictive analytics, it's for the uses I had within my legal department, it was much less risk if it was learning towards pitchfork than a Gen AI, large language model, which is completely hallucinating everything that it's just told me.
Yeah. Well, I can see why the guys over at LexFusion wanted you on board. I can just feel the energy and the experience coming off of you. So, but I have to say I did read your title, and it looks like somehow or another you didn't just land a job at LexFusion, you landed 3 jobs. So from what I can tell, you're managing director for corporate legal operations, commercial transactions, and innovative accelerations. So I want to congratulate you on the 3 jobs that you've accepted there, and then ask you, how did Joe, Casey, and Paul, the co-founders there at LexFusion, how did they twist your arm to get you to join them there?
So those are my 3 titles for today. After this past week in New York, we probably have 17 more to add. I won't encourage Joe, Casey, or Paul to do that at this time. So we'll just keep it to those 3. I've like I said, I've known Joe for many, many years, since my Pangea 3 days. We were together. He joined a little bit after me, but we were together through the acquisition by Thomson Reuters. And, he's incredible. He's just incredible. He is a wonderful person. He's brilliant. He's just a joy to work with. So from a personality perspective, like immediate fit. Casey is a genius. And anyone who's had the pleasure of seeing him speak, recognize that he is probably one of the foremost experts in kind of the next thing or the things that have been done in the past within the legal space. And he's just incredible. And Paul also had some time at Thomson Reuters and the kind of the Pangea 3 crowd. And, he is one of the most incredible, and I hate to use the term salesperson because I feel that doesn't do justice to what he brings, which is really having the desire to fix problems, having the empathy to recognize that people are struggling, and he knows how to help solve those problems. So he's delivering, solutions to things that, keep people up at night. And so it's just the combination of the 3 of them is, I talk about leadership and following the leadership. The combination of the 3 of them, it was a no-brainer for me from a leadership perspective that, they're the right crowd to join. the other component I talked about earlier was vision, right? The vision of what they're trying to do. And Joe told me a bit about the organization a couple of years ago when they got together and started out. And I could see an inkling of a good idea. But I hadn't had enough experience at Citi yet at the time to really understand the value or the impact that they can make, both on the law firm side and then from my personal bias, the in-house corporate side. So, I reconnected with I've been connected with all of them for always, and I just started kind of processing it a little bit more myself, thinking like the amount of impact I've been able to have at Citi by creating an innovation lab, creating a program called Lawyer of the Future, creating an AI for legal program so I could get my lawyers in legal department on AI tools so they could understand what it does, what it doesn't do. I spent most of my career on the selling side, and so I know when the vendor or the solution provider and technology is giving me demo magic, or just kind of leading me down a path that I know they might not be able to deliver on. Don't ask me how I know that. I led pre-sales for a couple of years, so I know demo magic when I see it, and I really hope I allowed Citi to make better buying decisions when it came to professional services, when it came to legal technology. And so when I thought about my experience in that eclectic experiences I have throughout my career on the sell side, and then my incredible journey at Citi on the buy side, I really thought that I could add value to LexFusion to help their membership, as well as to help their law firm and corporate clients, make better and more informed product development and decisions, help them develop products in a way that makes it easier for organizations as complex as tier one financial institutions to buy and apply against their business and use cases, and then really help the in-house counsel kind of cut through the madness that is legal technology these days to really hone in on those organizations that will solve their problems within their lifetime. Onboarding is quite a process. So if we can help accelerate some of the onboarding because, we're introducing the right people at the right time, then I'm just hoping I can really add value to both sides of the house. And so LexFusion turned out to be a perfect match for that. And every time I open my mouth there, they're like, great, Christina, we're going to add that to the things for you to do. So I'll probably stop here before I give them any more ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, no good deed goes unpunished. So be careful.
Exactly. So obviously there is a lot going on, but can you hone in on a few things in terms of what really excites you about the new role and what you hope to accomplish?
Well, a couple of things that are really exciting to me. One, I've spent the past week in New York getting to know some of our members. I've known a lot of them for a number of years, but really getting to know their leadership. And like I said, it's really about the leadership and the vision they have for their product and how they're delivering. And I think that the members that we are working with, they're on it, right? They are incredible. They have the right people. And I think that's one of the other things that I really like about LexFusion. They can be very selective about who they work with just because they have an extensive network, and they can really kind of hone down on those solutions and leadership that are driving value. So incredibly excited about our membership. I'm really excited about expanding our membership network to other areas within kind of the commercial transaction corporate space that will help solve additional challenges that in-house counsel face. And then I'm also incredibly excited about, again, working with my former peers. I still consider myself a peer, but my former peers within organizations to help them set up, potential strategies to allow them to build innovation and technology programs if they don't have one already, along the lines of how I supported at Citi. So again, taking that knowledge and trying to help others build a program that will see their organization successful. But at the end of the day, too, I really want to see people have kind of that personal and professional individual satisfaction because maybe they're making an impact they always hoped they were making, or maybe because we're helping drive solutions that allow them to go have dinner with their family at night, right? I know that's kind of an old adage, but still people some people like to have dinner with their family at night. Some people, it's a great excuse not to go home and have dinner with their family. But if I can help drive whatever their personal and professional goals are through my experience, like it's so exciting for me.
What's the customer that you're attracting look like? What's the reason that someone would reach out to you at LexFusion to help them? What's a problem that you would help them solve?
Well, I have a very wide range of knowledge. Some of it's useless, but hopefully some of it's also useful. So I think on the member side, what we can offer is not only our incredibly extensive network, our reach into law firms, our reach into in-house corporations, but also our extensive understanding of what it takes to build a successful organization from the ground up, right? Some of our members are very well established. Some of our members have recently been acquired. Some of our members have already gone public, right? But some of our members are looking to build, grow, scale, and then, potentially in the future have an exit strategy. So if I can take my experiences on the services side from Pangea 3 through the technology side from Seal Software and help them kind of craft that vision into whatever the leadership's ultimate goals are, I really hope to be able to help support that on the membership side. But again, like I said, I also want to bring in members that have a bigger kind of allows us to expand our portfolio to have more offerings that will service more of the corporate clients. For the corporate side, what I really hope is I can help them accelerate their time to bring innovation on board, and I think that, I'm getting very excited about the opportunity. So I want to make sure your question didn't get away from me a little bit. But I think that the value that LexFusion brings is both on that membership side, helping build companies and get their products in front of the right people, but then also on our other customer side, making sure that we are bringing them the right products to solve for the challenges that they're facing, and knowing that it's coming from a trusted source, that we have been through it with you. We're not here to do anything other than to support your goals inside.
Now, there was an interview you did last week before, with Caroline Hill, who's great with the Legal IT Insider. And in that, you said something that kind of caught my eye with your experience at Citi. And we kind of talked about it here, in that, you don't necessarily want to do something that will cause the whole, global financial infrastructure to crumble. But that, that also kind of can prevent a good, conducive environment to, thoroughly test things, to really kind of reach out and try new things. And you talked about why failing fast was actually a good thing. I would love to scratch at that a little bit more. What do you mean by failing fast is actually a really good thing?
Yeah, it sounds a little counterintuitive, right? Where no one ever wants to have the word failure anywhere near their name. But I think that failure is
especially in legal.
Especially yeah. And I think that, when I had joined Citi, they had many different types of technology support available, depending on whether you are, on the business side, the legal side, more of a kind of a overall strategy for Citi as a global organization. And historically, within our global legal support on the technology side, they're an incredible team at taking a solution that has been selected, implementing, deploying, building it out, and then moving that into a business as usual, BAU status, which is essentially just ensuring that the technology continues to behave as expected, making sure we're putting the right patches on it, making sure we're getting the right updates to it. And this is more probably appropriate for when we had everything on premise. As we moved to the cloud, it became a little less important, because there's the lift is different when things are on cloud versus on-prem, right? But what I found is that as I'm exploring and as I'm looking at cool technology, especially in the emerging category, I wanted to be able to tinker with it in a safe environment and understand whether or not it truly works against our use cases. Because the onboarding process at Citi can take up to 2 years, right? So if I pick something and then I go down the road and 2 years later I go to implement and deploy it and find out, yikes, that didn't quite meet the brief because maybe a salesperson got one past me and I didn't quite see the demo magic, or maybe we didn't test it in the right way during like a POC or pilot. So I wanted to, put together an area within the organization that would allow me to really rigorously test different products against my organization's legal organizations, and also partially business organizations, business requirements and use cases. And I also wanted the ability to look at building technology stack solutions, especially when it came to regulatory responses, right? How can we reduce the amount of manual touches that we have during a large-scale regulatory response? How can we add automation to it? And I love to use analogies. This may or may not hit. My former team at Citi, Vicky, James, Janine, Brian, Diane. If you're listening to this, you're probably laughing at me right. So I'm going to try an analogy. So when I think about it, my innovation lab that we built, and it was based in London and Tel Aviv, and had components coming out of Dublin and New Jersey, was really kind of the place where we made the sausage. Now, I love vegan sausage. I love meat sausage. This is generic, just sausage, right? So the lab allowed me to kind of build the recipe, right? So we could source different types of products. We could look at different types of combinations, different types of flavor categories, look at different texture options in a way that we could quickly say, we thought that by adding blueberries, that was going to make the sausage delicious. It did not. Let's remove the blueberries and try maybe fennel instead, right? So it allowed us to kind of like play a little bit before we had that final solution architected to move over to deployment and to BAU. So at the end of the day, what comes out of the lab can be handed over to that technology function that is incredible at those things that I mentioned: implementation, deployment, and moving to BAU. So we go to the sausage factory, create an incredible sausage, and then we can move that into handing over to the grill master, handing it over to the host to distribute. And then we have the recipe that we can use again next time, right? And then when we want to do something new, we can go back into the lab and start tinkering again. So it gave us the freedom to pull things in, to move things out in a way that did not commit us to a 2-year onboarding cycle prematurely. And so we had much better architected solutions coming out of the lab, and accelerated some of that deployment and implementation challenges that we may have struggled with previously. And by the way, can I say stop?
Well, now I'm hungry. Well, I'm starving now, so it's like I got to go get breakfast. So, Christina, we're just about at the end of our time, and this has been fantastic. And usually, how we close is that we ask all of our guests our crystal ball question, and that is, what challenges or changes do you see in the legal industry over the next 2 to 5 years?
So I think some of the changes are absolutely going to be in the legal tech space, right? I think that it is ripe for some consolidation. I would anticipate, especially in the CLM space, if you go to any conferences, you see 800 new CLM vendors every single year. That will we should start seeing a consolidation of that market. We need to. We absolutely need to, because it's muddled, and it's no longer good enough to say that I'm different because I have AI, right? Like, yes, you're different now if you don't have AI, but I'm also
like you and everybody else get in line,
yeah. And I think we're also going to see those control factors coming in over the generative AI. So those organizations that are a bit more risk adverse will be using it in production instances because they understand kind of the nature of the beast, what it can do, and what the opportunities to bring value to the organization in the appropriate control framework. So I think that those are some of the things that we are absolutely going to see. And, the final thing that we might see, and we talk about this all the time, so I'm even hesitant to say it, but, kind of more pressure on the law firms from new and innovative ways to provide legal advice to organizations with technology as a foundational layer. So instead of building a firm looking at potentially law firms or lawyers as like the first key component, potentially looking at technology as the first key component and then building the lawyers on top of the technology. Don't know, but think that's very, very intriguing.
Well, Christina Wojcik, Managing Director of Corporate for LexFusion, along with now, I think we've added up 20 jobs that you have. I want to thank you very much for taking the time this week, especially since you're in New York doing other things, to come on the show and talk about us with your new role there at LexFusion. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
And of course, thanks to all of you, our listeners, for taking the time to listen to the Geek and Review podcast. If you enjoy the show, share it with a colleague. We'd love to hear from you, so reach out to us on social media. I can be found at Gebauer M on Twitter, LinkedIn, and at mgebauer66 on Threads.
And I can be reached on LinkedIn as well at Lambert on X and Lambert Pod on Threads and Blue Sky and all the other things that are out there right now. So, Christina, if someone wanted to learn more, they wanted to reach out, where's the best place that you could be found online?
You can absolutely reach out to me on LinkedIn, but you can also email me directly at christina.wojcik at lexfusion.com. And I look forward to hearing from everyone.
Listeners can also leave us a voicemail. Greg, we still have voicemail?
Sure. We'll say.
Okay. You could still leave us a voicemail on our Geek and Review hotline at 713-487-7821. And as always, the music you hear is from Jerry David DeSica. Thank you, Jerry.
Thanks, Jerry. All right, Marlene, I'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye-bye.